All right, Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, where right and left come to be reasonable, and I need that from you tonight. I know a lot of you are going to get pissed off at me for what I say. First, remember, I signed up for that, okay? That's what Let's Get After It is all about. You want to fight? Let's fight. I'm here for it, okay? Because there is right and there is wrong. And you are missing what this embassy attack was. You think it's about others. It's about us on two levels: who did it and who's going to be next, okay? And we don't talk about this enough, and shame on me for feeding so much of the BS that we allow to distract ourselves. The latest terror murder is proof of everything we're really battling against, and I mean we. Okay? Not MAGA versus the left and how many seats they can get so that they can get the money and pointing the fingers and prosecuting each other. That's all BS done to divide us for their advantage. Extreme Islamism. Not Muslims, not just Islam, not just Islamism, but extreme Islamism. Okay? That is the wellspring of terrorism, and it is an underrated threat in America. 9/11 is too long ago, apparently, and we are paying more attention to the threat of trans athletes than of terrorists recruiting and radicalizing the most vulnerable population in America: young men. The young man who murdered two Israeli embassy staffers, 30-year-old Yaron Lishinsky and 26-year-old Sarah Milgram, is a perfect example of the problem. He shouts "Free Palestine" not because he is from there or understands the place, but because as a young brown man, he identifies with the oppression and he has been conditioned to do that. We know the shooter is a far-left activist, caught on camera shouting "Free Palestine," and as he was arrested, he kept chanting the slogan and said, "I did it for Gaza." So why the F are all these people on the left saying "if true"? And if that's who he is, and if he's not an IDF plant, and you don't want any of the blame for what just happened on you? He is described as what he is. He said what he said. Stop asking why people who understand what we're up against, like Douglas Murray, caution Joe Rogan against his comic buddies bashing Israel for sport and to develop a following. Prosecutors allege this guy fired nearly 24 bullets in this attack because he wanted to kill as many as he could. And we know what's feeding the fire, right? Don't pretend to not know what this is about. The man has been conditioned to identify with the oppression in Gaza as if he's one of them, and there are so many like him here, in our families, on our campuses. Did he know one of his victims wasn't a Jew? I love how people are using that as it somehow mitigates what this was about. You know he didn't know, right? He was there to kill Jews, obviously. But imagine if you're right, and he did know that one of them was not Jewish. So now they're targeting not just Jews, but those who stand with Jews? Now, if it's not true, and I doubt it is, that he knew, it is certainly what Islamists instruct on the extreme side, here on American soil. Did he know that the two people he murdered were leaving an event that was about coordinating more aid to Gaza? Would it even matter when he's constantly told that Israel is starving as part of a genocide? And many feeding his broken brain are in America in positions of influence and power. And even though same people are now saying they're disgusted by this, even though it's the latest manifestation of their efforts. And they're saying they're against anti-Semitism, like the Squad and its putative leader, AOC. Absolutely nothing justifies the murder of innocents. Anti-Semitism is a threat to all we hold dear as a society. It must be confronted and rooted out everywhere. Did I miss the word Jews in there in terms of who was killed? Odd omission. Odd omissions. They're not just innocents. He just didn't go into a school and fire away. He was looking for Jews. You know, the people you say are conducting a genocide. Those people. Now, of course, AOC doesn't just say what I just read, right? Nor do her colleagues, right? And it's all those other signals and suggestions that foment what we saw here and on our campuses. And you can make the case, hold it, you can make the case. Don't draw a moral equivalency between the murder of 2 and the murder of thousands. Okay, in Gaza, okay. But what are you leaving out in that? I'll tell you what the parallel is, okay? These murders were precipitated by hate of Jews, just like October 7th. And what's happening in Gaza is being done by the people who were targeted. And Hamas, not freedom fighters, terrorists, refused to disarm, refused to stop hiding among civilians, refused to stop stealing the aid for civilians, and refused to return who they stole. And these 2 victims did nothing to this guy who killed them, whereas the people in Gaza, many of whom don't support Hamas, but many who do, October 7th is on Hamas. And until they turn over their people and surrender, how can you draw a moral equivalence between what Israel is doing and what started that? You can say it's too much. Of course it is. You can say there should be more aid. Of course there should. But the nexus of all of it necessarily goes back to the terrorists who started it, who are still there, with the tacit, if not open, respect and support of many people in this country. We have no idea how deep this problem goes here at home. Democrats, my brothers and sisters, I understand why you're worried about Trump. I understand why you call him an ultimate evil, but I don't agree. And if you want the ultimate evil, look at the Islamists, the extreme ones in America, not just Muslims. And mind your dogs who are doing their bidding. What am I talking about? Look online to the reaction. Americans calling a terrorist a hero again, saying he, like the healthcare CEO murderer, was justified in violence. It's the same thing I've heard in Iraq and Afghanistan, but now echoing from Indiana. This is not a one-off. It's just one more of what we choose to ignore. You remember that Islamist who drove a pickup truck with an ISIS flag attached through Bourbon Street, killing 14 people, injuring dozens and dozens more? You know, he's a citizen from Texas, right? And we used to see that as an irony, right? Wow, from Texas. That's like the last place you'd expect a Muslim extremist from, right? Wrong. Texas is ground zero for what I'm talking about. Did you know there's a push to create an Islamic residential development there? 1,000 homes, K through 12, faith-based school, a mosque, shops, insular community. What's wrong with that? Everything. Here, we assimilate. Here, the struggle is to remove the distinctions, the melting of the melting pot. That's what we're trying to reduce. The religious leader pushing for the project has openly admired the Muslim Brotherhood. Who are they? I'll tell you. Openly defended Hamas's killing of innocent civilians on October 7th. The developers initially advertised that the community would limit sales to only persons we believe will contribute to the overall makeup of our community. Meaning who? Reports say 75% of the housing fees will go to finance the local mosque, deterring non-Muslims, right? Now, before you say, hey, stop targeting Muslims, I'm not, okay? For me, I do not believe in demonizing an entire faith, and sure as hell, not all of the people who decide to believe in it. I agree that that is a mistake on both fronts. But remember what I said. The person who is the leader of this effort in Texas, what he said about Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. What is the goal of the Muslim Brotherhood? Reject Western influence, create Islamic governments around the world to enforce Sharia on societies. Many countries designate them as a terror agency. I'm shocked Trump hasn't. The ideological cradle for Hamas and al-Qaeda is the Muslim Brotherhood. They've been in the United States since the 60s, but they've morphed, metastasized. There's a malignancy, and it's spreading here in America. Their members aim to convert as many people as possible so that one day a majority of Americans will create a government under Sharia law. That's their goal. And guess who's been funding what we've been seeing on the campuses? The Brotherhood. You know who else funds a lot of bad stuff there? Here, not there, here. The guys who just gifted Trump a plane, that's who. That country's been crucial in funding the Muslim Brotherhood. Another report found that the Muslim Brotherhood funds a group called the American Muslims for Palestine, directly funding the popular campus protest group Students for Justice in Palestine. And another group, the Muslim Student Association, was founded by members of the Muslim Brotherhood. And another group that funds the student protests, called the Samadown Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network, has been sanctioned by the Treasury Department for raising money for the Gaza terror organization PFLP. So, this is what I need you to understand, all right? It's too simple to say it's horrible that Jews were targeted here in America. Get used to it. They're not safe anywhere. And they have to be defended for what they represent about all of us everywhere. That's how big this is. Every one of these things, every time it happens, oh no, it's just him, it's just this, it is all connected. What's going on with him, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on our campuses. You think that we are an island here. You think that because there is a relatively small Muslim community in America, that it doesn't really matter. You're wrong. And it is in this context that I look at what's happening at Harvard University. It is a no-brainer argument for me to say the president can't tell a university who to let in and not let in. It can tell them to not have discriminatory practices if they want to get any government funding, but you can't say no international students. Half of our Nobel winners for America have come from somewhere else. It's easy to make that argument. And it may well be the right argument. But it is not the only argument. Not in the context of what we're talking about and what we're seeing right now. How many killers are being made on campus? So I get it. I'm not saying it should win as an interest, but I get it. Questioning their ability at a place like Harvard that stubbornly resists what it is an enabling on campus, and questioning its ability to enroll international students if it's going to keep picking ones that want to kill Jews. Now, this would be a massive financial blow to the nation's wealthiest college, since nearly a third of their student body are international students, and I think that probably makes them a stronger university. The DHS secretary posted today that Harvard has lost their student and exchange visitor program certification as a result of their failure to adhere to the law. Let this serve as a warning to all universities and academic institutions across the country. Warn about what? Let's bring in former White House ethics czar and Harvard law grad Norm Eisen and former acting DHS deputy secretary under Trump, Ken Cuccinelli. Cooch, you there?
Good to see you.
All right, we're figuring out Norm's comms, but I wanted to come to you first anyway, Ken. So you heard what I just said,
okay,
and why I get what's going on right now in the sensitivity. As a lawyer first, wear your lawyer hat. Tell me why this could be okay for the administration to do, and then what's your take on the policy?
So every school signs up for the CVIS program. I'll call it the CVIS program, just to stick with the acronym. And they have lots of requirements of oversight. They have a school official who is the lead liaison there. And DHS during the spring has been making requests for information to Harvard consistent with the regulation governing this. And Harvard is not responding in a way that the administration considers adequate on a repeated basis. So they finally yanked the privilege of getting international students coming into the university. I don't know whether they mean that to be to grandfather the ones who are there, or whether they're going to pull the F-1 visas even of students who are there. Both are possible, but it's not entirely clear to me yet which of those they're doing. And at Harvard, international students are about a quarter of the student body, which I know a lot of people will find rather surprising. It's not the only university like that, but it is a very high proportion.
All right, Norm, let me bring you on the legal side. We're kind of treating you like a whistleblower. I keep blurring your face for the audience every 5 seconds. I don't know why, but hopefully the shot will stabilize. Ken's argument is Harvard did not comply with the reporting requirements that the government requires as part of this program. That's why this is happening. So legally, it's legit. What do you say?
Ken has got to be the only person in the country who believes that's the real reason for what's going on here, Chris. This is part of Donald Trump's revenge and retaliation tour. This is not going to hold up in a court of law, just like over 150 judges of both parties have rejected similar illegalities by Donald Trump. This violates the Administrative Procedures Act. It's arbitrary and capricious. Harvard has provided this information. Suddenly, the Trump administration is finding that they didn't. Why are they singling them out from all other American universities? Come on. This is about forcing Harvard to bend the knee. It's outrageous. It's unconstitutional. It's contrary to law, and it's cruel to these students and to the Harvard community. It's sickening.
Ken, I'm coming back to you, but hold on 1 second. Norm, is a little bit of that outrage misplaced given what we just witnessed at the embassy? And what we know is going on in terms of radicalization from the Muslim Brotherhood, and what we know is echoing their sentiments on a lot of these campus protests. It's absolutely at Harvard. Norm, what about that piece?
Chris, my heart breaks for those two innocent people who were killed in that cruel act of anti-Semitism. But the way to deal with that is not to punish 7,000 students who come to the United States, who end up being the best ambassadors for the United States, who had nothing to do with that episode in Washington, D.C., Chris. We're talking about Cambridge, Massachusetts here. And when you have the administration engaging in these acts of retaliation and revenge unconstitutionally, it's a totally separate thing. Donald Trump has his own problems with anti-Semitism, as do those in his administration. I categorically reject the comparison.
Well, it's hard to find a president who's embraced Israel more than Donald Trump has in recent history. But I take your policy argument. Ken, the policy argument is you're punishing thought. That's what you're doing. The retaliation against the university, that is, I'd need proof of the intentionality. But you're punishing thought, and you're not supposed to do that. Academic freedom is part of the extension of the First Amendment.
So the president campaigned on bringing these universities to heel, and in terms of this outrageous anti-Semitism, anti-Americanism. And look, the Trump administration wasn't playing games when they made these comments. They said this is part of the problem. That Harvard is only the beginning. Other universities can expect the same treatment under the Code of Federal Regulations that gives the federal government the authority to do exactly what they're doing with Harvard, and that is cut off student visas. Look, I appreciate Norm, but his rant about the just general illegality is not accurate. Read the regulation. They may fight over whether the information provided back to the administration is adequate or not, but if in my time at DHS, the general quality of the work done to maintain CVIS by these universities of all kinds, including Ivy League, was very, very poor. They're not likely in a very good position to fight back against the Trump administration. And it is about more than just whether they get international students. It is, as the Trump administration said, they've been supportive of the CCP on that campus. They've allowed anti-Semitism to run rampant, not just threats, but physical assaults. And so Harvard is losing a privilege, not a right, to have foreign students coming to the university. And I expect to see more universities to have the same thing done at their university as well.
Norm, give me a quick last word, please.
The president's actions must comport with the Constitution and laws. That same CVIS program relating to foreign students, Trump administration abuses were just enjoined today, Chris, in San Francisco by a federal court. Ken knows these issues well because while he was at DHS, they had to settle paying millions of dollars out because of family separations. Whatever the president can do legally in theory, in practice, it must not be arbitrary and capricious. It must not be done to exact a penalty of revenge. That's what's going on here. We all know it. It won't stand up in court.
Well, we'll see. We'll see the litigation.
Yeah.
I appreciate your family separation has been a problem for the last 3 administrations. We all know what happened with the Flores settlement.
But it has nothing to do with this issue. It has nothing to do with this issue.
But I get it. It's all related in terms of what some people believe Trump is about. But we'll see on this one. But, Norm, I got to tell you, right now, we got to be careful what we're allowing to spread in this country and what we're going to see taking root. I am so afraid that this embassy is not a one-off. It is a look into our future, and I hate that. Norm Eisen, I appreciate you being here. And Ken Cuccinelli, as always, thank you for making the case. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. I want to look at this through the lens of somebody who has been really influential to me as someone who speaks truth to power on the issues that are at play in this embassy murder, okay? A well-known journalist, international journalist, who says she was retaliated against for arguing that Israel has a right to defend itself, okay? Then I want to bring in a guy I also lean on about the state of terror in America to explain how bad this can get and is getting and what has to be done that isn't. Next. I want to bring in Erin Molan, former Australian TV host, been very outspoken in her support of Israel. So much so she's received a lot of death threats, a lot of pushback professionally and personally. I also want to bring in former FBI and CIA counterterror official Phil Mudd. It's good to have you both. Erin, I start with you. I don't know, first of all, it's great to almost meet you in person. We've been talking a lot about these issues and what they mean. You heard what I said up at the top. What do you believe the American audience needs to understand about what radicalized this guy who was not Palestinian, who was not Muslim, but certainly became an agent for the Muslim Brotherhood?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Chris. I really appreciate it. I think your words were spot on at the start of your show. You absolutely nailed it. This is one of the greatest threats that we face. Yes, the rising threat of China, absolutely. Look at Qatar, look at Iran. Extremism that already exists in the Western world is utterly terrifying, and we've seen a first-hand example of that. What I would say to the American public is, I care deeply about children in Gaza. The thought of any child hurting is heartbreaking, but I understand who their enemy is. I understand what the threat is, and it's not Israel. It is Islamic extremism. It is terrorism. So if you want to march in the streets and you want to jump onto a cause, do it. We all should. We all should fight vehemently for every single child. But you've got to understand who their enemy is, or you will create circumstances like we saw last night, and that is absolutely tragic.
You know, Phil, you and I have talked about this a lot, you know, and in the years after 9/11, there was a lot of worry. There was basically a case in every state where officials in one of the agencies that you've worked at were trying to identify this homegrown extreme Islamist threat. And then we just decided to worry about other things. What is this a reminder of, what we just witnessed in D.C.?
In some ways, it's a reminder of the transition from a foreign problem, that is the al-Qaeda problem, that a lot of people in America, I think, thought was overseas, to a homegrown problem that is going into 2005, 2010, 2015. a problem like ISIS that we saw, as you said, in 50 states across America, not necessarily connected to Pakistan or Afghanistan, but kids in states and cities across America who said, I want to join up with this movement. But this is bigger. You try to define for me, Chris, the number of people across America who are pro-Palestinian compared to, let's say, pro-Al-Qaeda or pro-ISIS. There's got to be millions, maybe tens of millions. We never saw that in 2010. You take that down, distill that down to the number of those people who might say that violence is appropriate. In some ways, Chris, I guess you could compare this to the homegrown problem we saw 15 years ago, but the numbers don't match up. You cannot stop this. You cannot, as long as war continues. Not a question about who's right or wrong. Numbers game. You can't stop it, Chris.
So, Aaron, how do you deal with people saying, and I know it's a circular argument, but the toll in Gaza is so much greater in magnitude in terms of number and depth of despair than what happened on October 7th, that the argument becomes October 7th, bad, this, worse.
Chris, what I would say to that, and you're right, again, I reiterate the point that it is utterly devastating. Anybody suffering anywhere in the world who is innocent, my heart breaks for. But you need to understand the position that Israel is in at the moment. And let me say, I'm not Israeli, I'm not Jewish. If on October 8 every hostage had been returned and Hamas had laid down their arms, you could absolutely argue that continued military action in Gaza would be revenge motivated, would not be proportionate to what occurred. But Hamas, on the day of the first ceasefire that was brokered, came out and said publicly on TV, we will repeat what occurred on October 7. We will continue these atrocities over and over and over again. They are still sending bombs over to Israel. They still have hostages. So any anger at suffering and death in Gaza should exist and should be expressed, but we need to understand who is responsible for it. And in my mind, that is Hamas and Hamas alone.
I think it's going to happen a lot more, Phil. I hate saying that. I love being wrong about any catastrophic prediction. But this guy, I call him a kid because I'm so old now. But, this 31-year-old in D.C., I just feel like I see him on every campus. I see him every time I speak about this anywhere. A lot of times they're white, a lot of times they're brown, and they identify with the oppression. And it's almost like they're looking for something to belong to, where it just happens that America's the target. And let's be honest, Phil, when have we ever seen since the 60s it being more appealing to attack America as an American than right now?
Chris, I hate to agree with you, but I would. I mean, if you look at the characteristics of terrorism, which I've followed since the early 90s, there are characteristics you look at. Leadership, there is leadership. We're talking obviously about Hamas, and Hamas can message around the world. There's an issue of openness in this country. Obviously, you have the right to free speech, so you can speak about being pro-Palestinian. But there is this, in the world that I followed years ago at the CIA and the FBI, messaging is critically important. If you look at even the changing messaging globally over the past month, the Europeans are starting to say Israel is wrong. There's a lot of Americans who are uncomfortable with what's happening with Israel. So in the environment where there are a lot of young people absorbing a message, the message being that Israel is too aggressive in what they're doing, that message is becoming more and more prominent in the West. And that means more and more young people are going to start to say, the Israelis got to pay, right or wrong, good or bad. It is obviously bad. There's going to be people who pay. I think you're right. We're going to see more of it.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because this war will end, but they don't need it to be Israel. They were coming after us. There are plenty of people in the region who see us as 100 times worse than Israel, and there's going to be ample opportunity. And you're right. In America, you get to say whatever you say, and you can organize, and you can do all these things that other places don't let you do. And we're literally architects of our own disadvantage, and that's the burden of a democracy. Hey, Aaron, I hope we get to have a lot more conversations. I know you're doing so much work all around the world. I'm always available if you can come on from anywhere to discuss what's happening and why. Thank you for doing it tonight, okay? And to be continued. All right, Phil, whatever. We'll talk again. Appreciate it. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Coming up, the stock market bounced back, so we should be happy, right? I guess the tariffs worked. The market's good. I don't see it that way. I want answers about the concerns that independent third parties have about this latest budget that was just agreed on and what it's going to do for our deficit and what the tariffs are already doing to small businesses. Howard Lutnick is the Commerce Secretary. He knows the tariffs. He's one of the architects of them. His argument next.
We have a 10% tariff on everything in the world right now. Right now, today. And how much inflation is there right now? Everything in the world's got 10%. You go to the store now, are you feeling the pain? No. Why not? Because there is no pain.
Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. He's a markets guy. He's a sophisticated guy. He was one of the minds behind the tariff situation. All right? So I want to bring him in to discuss the state of play with the new budget bill and where we are with the deals being made. It's good to see you, Secretary.
Great to see you.
That wasn't somebody attacking you, was it?
Great to see you. Just someone in the studio with me making a little bit of noise. That's all I'm doing.
In the no pain, why isn't this simple answer? There's no pain because it takes time for these to take effect, and that's why the markets have reacted to them more the way they have. That's why the Treasury auction went the way it did. That's why there's a Sell America trade among investors now. That's the proof that the tariff regime, the tariff scheme is going to have problems.
No. So the way it works is that the world has a 10% tariff now. So the way it actually runs through the markets is that the selling countries overseas, they eat most of it. The currency, as they trade to us, eats the rest of it. And you had the president of Amazon on his earnings call saying that basically Amazon has seen no change in demand and no change in price. So the fact is, at 10%, you're not going to see it. Above 15%, I agree, you're going to see it. But China eats the above numbers, so it's not about China. But the rest of the world at 10%, you're not going to feel anything at all, in my opinion.
But what do you tell your brothers and sisters in the markets that are trading differently and feeling that it is going to be a problem and that interest rates, you know, what Moody's did and what's going to happen with interest rates is going to make it harder for us to finance our interest payments? I mean, the people who are your friends don't agree with you.
You know, you got to listen to Donald Trump. Remember when he said it was a good time to buy, and lately he says it's a good time to buy? Currently, the United States of America is taking in more than $30 billion a month from these 10% tariffs around the world. Our earnings as a country are rising. Our deficit is going to decline. Our budget is going to be less deficits. That's going to bring down interest rates. You're feeling gas prices down. You're seeing the eggs and grocery prices down. The world is working the way Donald Trump thinks it's going to work. And anybody who bets against Donald Trump is just going to feel the pain of getting it wrong. He's been right all along, and I think you should feel confident that he's going to be right again.
Look, we want the country to be in a good place. I'm just concerned about what we see as the aspects as we go along. You were one of the architects of the tariff situation, and you keep using the number 10% or 15%, but you guys threw out much bigger numbers than that. And is that part of the problem, the perception that you did too much too soon, and then you had to back off it when the markets went crazy?
No, I mean, look, the president knows the art of the deal. There's no one who understands it better than him. So we said, look, if you don't negotiate with us and you just want to continue to treat us badly, remember, $1.2 trillion we were buying from these other countries. So if you want to treat us badly and continue to treat us badly, we're going to charge you a high rate. But come on. Open your markets to us. Let our ranchers, let our farmers, let our businesses export to you. Let's build our business back. Let's lower that tariff rate. That's what's coming. You put that together with no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, and you've got really the makings of an incredibly strong economy coming. I think it feels really good. I think the opportunity is really good. I think the tax bill is really good. I think right now, I would say it feels really good. And the whole Moody's thing, they're not counting the fact that the President of the United States of America has said we're going to earn more money from tariffs. We're just not going to get ripped off anymore. And I think you're going to see interest rates go in the other direction. That's what you should expect, because that's what the market is going to expect.
Then you have Moody's, you have the CBO, who says this bill that the Republicans just passed is going to add to the deficit, is going to make it harder. They say it's twice as much as the estimates that the Republicans are putting out. You got small businesses all over the country who are saying, Howard, we're already feeling it. We can't source stuff. You got to help us relieve the tariffs from these small businesses that can't find what they need in America.
I think what happened is you had the period of time with China where we had to, slug it out with China, and the president decided to play it his way. And of course, generally things work out the way he thinks they're going to work out. That's just the way it's worked for him over many, many years. So you have China coming down. That's going to alleviate a lot of this stuff, and you're going to feel it flow through the market. The rest of the world is only at 10%. I think what you're going to see, and all these small businesses are going to see, is no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, right? A very, very attractive tax policy that really takes care of small businesses across this country, coupled with a great economy that's growing huge numbers of jobs. Because think about it. The president said $10 trillion worth of factories being built in America. You know how many jobs that's going to bring? 5 million high-paying jobs coming in and being trained to be in these great high-tech factories. And you're going to see an economy in America that's roaring. All those people who get those 5 million jobs, they're going to the store, they're going to the deli, they're going to the near hardware store, and that drives our economy. That drives the local economy, and that's what we're about. Steel and aluminum in America, mine, refine, and drill. These are all jobs for America, and that's why we feel so good about the economy.
And look, again, I want you to feel good about the economy. I just want you to make it good. And, there are a lot of ifs that you're putting in there in terms of what gets developed, how long it is, what actually really happens, especially if you keep telling me just believe Trump. That's not going to work for me. It's going to have to be the data that does it. But why not give the small businesses relief who are already feeling it?
Look, you have Apple, who said they'd invest $500 billion. You believe Tim Cook? Mark Zuckerberg said he's going to invest $500 billion. Jensen Huang, who runs NVIDIA, $500 billion. These are $500 billion investments, right? All these companies, if you add them all up, it's $10 trillion. They are saying we're going to build in America, and they're building now. It's fire. It's building now. And he did. He just passed no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. He's delivering exactly what he ran on. He's bringing relief in the tax bill to small businesses. I think you're going to see small businesses are going to be fire. And the investments are coming to America. Donald Trump is delivering what he said. I think the place is set. The table is set for a tremendous victory. You're going to see GDP up at 4%. You're going to see a better growing economy than you can imagine under Donald Trump, because he understands how to do it. It's this way. It's bringing back factories to build in America. That's the key.
Last thing for you, Howard, and I appreciate you answering the questions. The CBO has an estimate that's about half the one you just gave. What are they getting wrong?
The CBO, these are all odd scoring mechanisms, okay? The Congress's way of scoring things, do you realize, I'll give you an example. We just said we're earning more than $30 billion in the month of May from tariffs. You know how much the CBO scores that? 0.
All right.
Because it's not part of their bill. Therefore, they don't count it. So you know what? That's just inside Congress, like inside baseball. Let's leave that to the congressmen for their silly nonsense. The real economy is rocking. Everybody feels good in the America that I live in and that you live in. And you can feel it out there. It feels good.
Well, listen. If I wouldn't be asking you the questions, Howard, if everybody was telling me they were feeling that way. That's why I'm asking you what I'm asking you, and I appreciate you answering it, and you're always welcome here to do so. Thank you for taking the opportunity.
Thanks. Okay,
all right, Mr. Secretary, be well. I hope so. I hope America does great, but we got to go with where we are right now. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So the Diddy case Finally, after nearly 2 weeks, we finally saw something that goes to the actual charges. Not Diddy's a dirtbag, but here's something that substantiates RICO charges. What was it, and did the defense deal with it? Let's bring in Misty Maris. The prosecution finally seemed to be going after RICO. How and did it hit?
So racketeering conspiracy requires the prosecution to show that there were crimes called predicate crimes that were done by co-conspirators in furtherance of a criminal enterprise. So today we hit arson. Kid Cudi talked about his car being blown up and on fire due to a Molotov cocktail, and he said he believed that to be Combs or his, quote, affiliates. Well, listen, they got that on the record. That's one of those predicate crimes. My opinion, prosecutors have a lot more to go to establish RICO conspiracy. Defense did some damage on Cross, saying, did you really know they weren't caught on camera? He didn't see anybody. No one was ever arrested. So perhaps have some doubt on that front with respect to that. But look, Chris, we've heard nothing about the RICO so far. So here's a predicate crime of arson. We expected it to come from Kid Cudi, and today we heard that on the stand.
And they have to connect it to an enterprise, not that he once committed arson. That would be a standalone charge. Misty Maris, I appreciate you very much for the sophistication and the brevity. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. We'll be right back. A president once said, give me an economist with one hand, because they're always saying on the other hand. Just listen to Trump and believe what he believes does not work for me when it comes to the economy or anything else. Small businesses all over this country are hurting, and a big reason for it is the tariff tango that the president did. We don't know where it's going to go, but we know where it is, and people are under strain. And this budget arguably will not make it better. That's why we have to ask the questions, and Leland Vittert will do that right now.